Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of The League of Biblical Enthusiasts. Well, the time has come to talk about the Geneva Bible, and here is my facsimile copy. The Geneva Bible is one of the most historically significant translations of the Bible into English. It preceded the King James Version by some 51 years. The Geneva Bible was the primary Bible of 16th century English Protestantism and was used by such notables as William Shakespeare, Oliver Cromwell, John Knox, John Donne, and John Bunyan, author of Pilgrim's Progress. It was one of the Bibles taken to America on the Mayflower, and the Pilgrim Hall Museum has collected several Bibles of Mayflower passengers. The Geneva Bible is significant because for the first time a mechanically printed, mass-produced Bible was made available directly to the general public, which came with a variety of scriptural study guides and aids, which included verse citations that allowed the reader to cross-reference one verse with numerous relevant verses in the Bible. Introductions to each of the books of the Bible acted to summarize all the material that each book would cover. Maps and tables, woodcut illustrations and indices, and especially commentary in the margins was provided. In effect, it is the first study Bible. During the reign of Queen Mary I of England, 1553 to 1558, several Protestant scholars fled from England to Geneva, Switzerland, which was then ruled as a republic, in which John Calvin and later Theodore Beza provided the primary spiritual and theological leadership. Among these scholars was William Whittington, who supervised the translation we now call the Geneva Bible, in collaboration with Miles Coverdale, Christopher Goodman, Anthony Gilby, Thomas Sampson, and William Cole. Whittington was directly responsible for the New Testament, which was completed and published in 1557, while Gilby oversaw the Old Testament. The first full edition of the Geneva Bible, with a further revised New Testament, appeared in 1560, but it was not printed in England until 1575, that is the New Testament, and in 1576, the complete Bible. Over 150 editions were issued, the last probably in 1644. The first Bible printed in Scotland was a Geneva Bible, first issued in 1579. In fact, the involvement of John Knox and John Calvin in the creation of the Geneva Bible made it especially appealing in Scotland, where a law was passed in 1579 requiring every household of sufficient means to buy a copy. The annotations, which are an important part of the Geneva Bible, were Calvinist and Puritan in character, and as such were disliked by the ruling pro-government Anglicans of the Church of England. Disliked also by King James I, who commissioned the Authorized Version, or King James Version, in order to replace it. The Geneva Bible had also motivated the earlier production of the Bishop's Bible under Elizabeth I, for the same reason, and the later Rheims Douay edition by the Catholic community. The Geneva Bible remained popular among Puritans and remained in widespread use until after the English Civil War. The Geneva Notes were surprisingly included in a few editions of the King James Version, even as late as 1715. But like most English translations of the time, the Geneva Bible was translated from scholarly editions of the Greek New Testament and the Hebrew Scriptures. The English rendering was substantially based upon earlier translations by William Tyndale and Miles Coverdale. However, the Geneva Bible was the first English version in which all of the Old Testament was translated directly from Hebrew. The Geneva Bible was the first English Bible to use verse numbers based on the work of Stephanus or Robert Estienne of Paris. By this point, he was living in Geneva. It also had an elaborate system of commentary in the margins, and the commentary and notes were distinctly Protestant, anti-Catholic, and thus heavily disliked by the Roman Catholic theologians. Especially objectionable were some of the comments in the margins of the Geneva Bible. For example, Daniel 6:22 and Exodus 1:19, where the text is regarding kings, the monarchy. For example, Daniel 6:22, for he, Daniel, disobeyed the king's wicked commandment in order to obey God. And so he did no injury to the king, who ought to command nothing by which God would be dishonored. And in Exodus 1:19 regarding the Hebrew midwives lying to their leaders, the comment says, their disobedience herein was lawful, but their dissembling evil. So comments such as these were seen subversive to the king and, of course, highly objectionable. Similar comments were anti-pope, anti-Catholic in nature, and of course featured comments regarding certain doctrines of the Catholic Church which Protestants found to be objectionable. Next, we discuss the Bishop's Bible of 1568. The Bishop's Bible is an English translation of the Bible which was produced under the authority of the established Church of England in 1568. It was substantially revised in 1572, and the 1602 edition was prescribed as the base text for the King James Bible that was completed in 1611. The Bishop's Bible succeeded the Great Bible of 1539, which was the first authorized Bible in English, and the Geneva Bible of 1560. The thorough Calvinism of the Geneva Bible, which is very evident in the marginal notes, offered the High Church Party of the Church of England, offended the High Church Party of the Church of England, to which almost all of its bishops subscribed. In an attempt to replace the objectionable Geneva translation, they circulated one of their own, which we know as the Bishop's Bible. So the Bishop's Bible was a reactionary Bible specifically commissioned to replace an objectionable translation. The translators of the King James Bible were instructed to take the 1602 edition of the Bishop's Bible as their base text, although several other translations were also considered. After it was published in 1611, the King James Bible soon took the Bishop's Bible as the de facto standard Bible of the Church of England. Next, the Douay-Rheims Bible, New Testament in 1582, Old Testament in 1609 and 10. The Douay-Rheims Bible is a translation of the Bible from the Latin Vulgate into English, made by members of the English College Douay in the service of the Roman Catholic Church. The New Testament portion was published in Reims, France, 1582, in one volume with extensive commentary and notes. The Old Testament portion was published in two volumes 27 years later in 1609 and 10 in the University of Douay. This Bible is also a reactionary Bible, and its notes reflect traditional Roman Catholic teachings. Although the Jerusalem Bible, New American Bible Revised Edition, Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition, and New Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition are the most used Bibles in English-speaking Catholic churches, the Douay-Rheims often remains the Bible of choice for the more traditional English-speaking Catholics today. The Douay-Rheims Bible is a translation of the Latin Vulgate, which is itself a translation from the Hebrew and Greek texts. The translation was prepared with a definite polemical purpose in opposition to Protestant translations. which also had polemical motives. Prior to the Douay-Rheims version, the only printed English language Bibles available had been Protestant translations. While the Bishop's Bible was an improvement over the Great Bible and the Geneva Bible was an improvement over both, none was universally recognized by all factions within the English Church. It was left to the translators of the Authorized Version of 1611, the King James Version, to bridge the gap between Anglican and Puritan or Reformed traditions. It is to that story we turn in the next version or edition of The League of Biblical Enthusiasts.